Mr. Sharp?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Faulkner?
Here.
Mr. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Groby? Mr. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Canulette? Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Stefanczyk? Mr. Bender? Mr. Artigue? Mr. Smith? You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the
Mr.
agenda
Chairman?
is, you're gonna do,
Mr.
is,
Chairman? Can I have the floor?
yeah,
In light of the fact that we have not received a judgment from written judgment from the judge in our zoning case, I'm going, and I know that there are some people here probably planning on talking about that tonight. We, the item on the agenda under executive session needs to be removed, and since we don't really have something we can react to tonight, so I would move that we remove the under executive session and the St. Tammany Parish Government James H. Welch Commissioner of Conservation for the Parish of East Baton Rouge, docket number 631370. Remove that from the agenda.
motion made and seconded. Any discussion, council members? Any discussion? Anybody in the audience? If not, please vote.
I'll try. Oh, it's working.
It's warming up.
Try again, please. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Thank you. This time we go into presentations. One is a certificate of recognition to Emma Ledech for many achievements and awards received for her accomplishments in and for the St. Tammany Parish School System. Mr. Belisario.
Miss Pat, would you come up to the front also? Your attention, everyone. I have known Emma's mom for quite some time, and her dad. And when I had heard through my wife in the school system on her achievement at the LSBA level on an award, I did some checking with the school system. They gave me information that tells that this is a great student who's graduating this weekend, and we're going to Florida State University in the fall. I'd like to read the Parish Government Certificate of Recognition. It says, the Parish Council desires to acknowledge the youth of this parish for their positive achievements and accomplishments. In particular, those who choose to remain in school, participate in their religious convictions, are morally and community conscious, and actively pursue productive lifestyles. Whereas Emma Landis is a senior at North Shore High, where she has a broadcasting internship at Channel 13, and also participates in Panther Television, North Shore High's television broadcasting program. And whereas Emma was the state representative at the 2015 LA Thespian Conference and is head of the media for her high school's thespian troupe, and whereas Emma's dedication and hard work are apparent by her choice to participate in her Channel 13 internship outside of normal school hours in Mandeville. Emma is an alumna of Summer Video Institute 2013, which is Channel 13's week-long summer video workshop for students. And whereas Emma has won numerous awards for her broadcasting work, she won the first place at LaQ, the Louisiana Computer Using Educators Student Video Competition, for her feature about North Shore High art student Gabby Armstrong. She most recently was the statewide grand prize winner of the LSBA's annual conference for her public service announcement, Public Schools, the Best Choice. And Emma, whereas has participated in numerous mission trips through her church, was a member of the North Shore High swim team, the Martin swim team, and the Hurricane Swim Club, attended the 2014 Girls State, and has been a volunteer at Slidell Little Theater. Whereas Emma is a recipient of the Honesty and Integrity Award and the American Legion Auxiliary Good Citizens Award. Now, therefore, on May 7th, we, Patricia P. Brister, and Parish President, and myself, Gene Belisario, Councilman District 9, take the great honor and recognize Emma Lendez for her outstanding achievements and honors. Thank you all.
What Jean read here is just a fraction of the things that Emma has done and been at the highest level of achievement in, and we thank you so much. Sorry we're going to lose you to Florida, but you'll come back, I know. So congratulations for such a great job throughout your life.
Here are Emma.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you.
Second item on the presentations is the certificate of recognition to Stephen Dwyer for his service on the St. Tammany Parish Recreation District 14.
Mr.
Dean.
Chair, could I think he's not made it here yet. Could we go down the
Sure.
list and then I'll let you know when he's here?
I know the next one's here. Number 3 is Veterans Update Presentation by Mr. David Lacerte, Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Grovey.
Thank you, sir. Chair. David asked to come in tonight to speak before the council and the public to give a very needed update on the Veterans Affair. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. The truth is, I just want to get out of Baton Rouge for a little while, so I appreciate that. My name is David Lacerte. I'm the Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs. I want to thank you all for your partnership and cooperation that you've extended to us over the past number of years, not just with our parish service offices in our parish, but also at the Southeast Louisiana Veterans Cemetery right down the road in Slidell. I can't speak to how many times families have come up to us and said what a blessing it is that we have that really revolutionary and groundbreaking facility right here in Southeast Louisiana to service the whole New Orleans metro area. So I want to thank your own staff, your own services. I want to thank President Brister for really going the extra mile and accommodating all the construction there, accommodating all the constituency requests, because it being right there on I-12, I can't tell you how many times we got phone calls as to when it was going to open, when it was going to become operational. And it's really our top producing, I hate to say that in the cemetery world, the biggest volume of use out of all of our state veteran cemeteries in the entire state of Louisiana, and that's just a testament to how hard we've worked here. I want to give you a little update on the works of our parish service offices. And I know that y'all have a very, very heavy veterans population here in St. Tammany Parish. Almost 21,000 veterans right here in this parish alone. I'm very happy to say that through the efforts of our benefits counselors, those employees have brought in over $60 million last year alone in compensation and pension dollars, tax-free, directly to the pockets of veterans and their family members. And that adds to around $350 million last year alone to the New Orleans metro region. So it's a great economic multiplier for your own areas. There's been a cooperative agreement in place since World War II where the parish puts up at least 25% of the cost of that office. The state covers the rest. So you do have some skin in the game, but I want to remind you that the very small amount that is contributed toward that veterans office really multiplies and pays huge dividends further down the line. I'm really happy to say that when we took over the administration a few years ago, we were bringing about $400 million a year in compensation and pension dollars in the state. Last year, we brought in almost $1.1 billion. We've almost tripled that number in a few short years. So I want to thank you all for your partnership in that. Of course, I spoke a little bit about the Veterans Cemetery. We'll be building our 4th state veteran cemetery to service the Monroe area later this year. That will be the newest one. It'll break the rookie season for the Veteran Cemetery down here in Southeast Louisiana, but we're clicking along. We're working on a lot of legislation here for the state. You know, there's a few particular bills that we support and our departmental bills. The first one requires higher education to be more college-friendly for our veterans, more campus-friendly. Provide things to our veterans like priority scheduling, provide things like mandatory counseling and different tutoring programs for our veterans to make things a little bit easier when they adjust, since these are non-traditional students. The second one requires a military articulation matrix to make sure that we're applying proper college credit for the courses they've already taken through their life experience. And there's another one that tweaks the tuition aid for our veterans as well, to make sure everyone and their dependents who have served the military are receiving in-state tuition regardless of where they're from. But I'm not going to bore you all to death with that. I think we're real happy with as we've progressed as a department. We really have led the nation in a lot of fronts. Things like the tuition issues, things like veterans treatment courts, which I hope is spearheaded here in St. Tammany Parish, on issues like spousal and license reciprocity for our military veterans. We really broke the ground nationally that you see a lot of the other states jumping on the bandwagon for. But if it pleases the council here, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have tonight. Don't send me back to Baton Rouge yet. Come on, you got to ask a couple.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all, and I'll stick around in case the audience wants to ask anything personally. So I want to thank y'all again. I'm really happy to talk to the locals anytime I'm in your neck of the woods. And if you need me, you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Number 4 is a presentation of a
Mr. Tanner.
donation to Mary Bird Perkins Center. Ms. Brister.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few months ago, after receiving letters and emails about the great service that many of our employees give to our constituents and our customers, we said, you know, we really ought to recognize them in a more public way. So we started the Employee of the Month in March. So we have 3 that we're going to bring tonight and just introduce them very quickly, but we will be doing this once a month now going forward. The first one is Melissa Kellum. Come here, Melissa. Last year, Melissa was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she never stepped back 1 minute. She worked through it. She was always had such high spirits. She took us all through it with her, and we're so proud of her, and she was our first Employee of the Month. So I thank you very much for everything you do, and especially your spirit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you very much. Lisa Maddox is next. She was our employee for the month of April. And all of you know Lisa and how hard she works for any special event. Lisa is out there first thing in the morning and doesn't leave till the last person leaves. She has done so many things, the 2015 extravaganza, the rubber duck regatta, the Kids Town. I could go on and on and on, but you see her here every day, and she works tirelessly for all of us. And thank you so much, Lisa, for everything you do. Thank you. Thank you. And for May, Jennifer Bushnell is our Employee of the Month. Jennifer has done many things throughout her career here also. She has she is a driving force in the success of the 10th Annual President's Arts Awards. She puts forth many, many hours. Her creativity comes through in everything she does, and she loves Mr. Tanner so much. So, congratulations, Jennifer. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to do that.
Did you have the Mary Bird Perkins thing, too?
I do.
Do that.
Could I ask Dr. Marquette? Oh, there you are. Jack is with you, and Leslie Landry.
Hi.
How are you?
Carrie Marquette.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Another thing that has been done, we have Jean's Day on Fridays, and if you want to participate in Jean's Day, you pay $1 a week, and it can be taken out of your check. So the employees that participate get to choose where they want the funds to go to. So this check, they chose Mary Bird Perkins, and you can see why. They have such a close relationship with many survivors, and they know what good you do, and we couldn't be happier. So we are here to present a check for $3,482 that the employees all paid themselves and picked Mary Bird Perkins as their recipient. So
Thank you so much.
thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Pat, Pat, you want to stay there and do North Lake Behavioral Health Facility?
Sure. As you all know, we are now the proud owners of what was once Southeast Hospital and all the property surrounding there. But 3 years ago, over 3 years ago now, the state made the announcement that they would be closing that hospital and closing the mental health facility that's been in this parish for over 50 years and is so badly needed. We were very fortunate. It was kismet. We received a call from West Mason and Dawn Steinberg saying they had seen that this facility was going to be closing. They have other facilities throughout the country, and they'd like to come and talk to us. They did, and it was a match made in heaven because they contracted with the state to keep the services going during this period where we purchased the hospital. And West Mason is going to come up and join me and tell you all about that. But I wanted to tell you, you're behind me. Coming over here. But they have just done a fantastic job, and now we are the proud owners, and we'll take the next step. But I want Wes just to catch you up to date on what they've done to improve and add on to there. So, Wes?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely appreciate it. Thank you for your time tonight. President Bister's correct. A couple of years ago, we saw an opportunity in Louisiana and thought we could help. And we did make a call, unsolicited, to try to come up with solutions to help save the hospital. We were able to work out a contract with the state in order to continue to serve the patients that needed help and save many jobs. On January 2nd, 2013, we started off with 33 patients and 148 jobs that we had saved. Part of my promise and personal commitment to the state as well as our company was that we'd grow these services, and at some point we would bring back all the services and all the jobs that unfortunately were cut. Today I'm proudly to say we serve close to 150 people on a daily basis. We're close to up to 400 jobs that we've provided or have kept or brought back, depending on the perspective you have. And we've added programs. We're now we're the largest provider of indigent care in the state of Louisiana. We're also one of the largest providers of residential care for adolescents in the state of Louisiana. And a majority of the kids that get served on a daily basis at North Lake are either kids who are out of state or didn't have services a couple of years ago. So we're very proud of our commitment to provide these services, grow these services. We continue to look at other opportunities to grow services throughout the campus. And like I said, right now we serve adolescents as well as adults on a daily basis, and we expect that to grow and continue. And we serve people not just in this parish, but throughout the entire state. We have people come as far as Baton Rouge, all the way up to Shreveport, to take part in our services that aren't provided in other parts of the state. So we're very proud of that. We're proud of the commitment. We're proud of the partnership. And it, is asked to mention that is our intent and our plan and our goal to purchase, parts of the land there and continue to have a partnership for many years to come. So we thank you. We appreciate you. It's been a long road, but we're very proud of where we are. So I guess if there's questions about North Lake or Meridian Behavioral Health, I'd be glad to answer them for anybody.
Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to thank Wes again and your company. They've just been here throughout and done everything we've asked, and it's been a great partnership, and thank you for all your hard work. And keeping that facility here in St. Tammany Parish was just so vital and important, and you helped us get it there.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you.
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Yes.
At this time, we'll do a certificate of recognition to Stephen Dwyer for his services on the St. Tammany Parish Recreation District 14, Mr. Dean, and Mr. Falconer, and Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I want to do is just give a brief little history of Mr. Dwyer here. If you know where I'm talking about, Rec District 14 is actually also called Coquille Sports Complex. Let's see, it was begun in 1999. Mr. Dwyer was one of the original board members. He started in 99, just now is resigning from the board. He was actually board chair from 2000 to 2015. Since 1999, the youth participation increased from 350 to over 3,000. If you ever go out there on a weekend, I don't care what season it is, if you ever go out there on the weekend, it is packed. The hotels around there are packed with the families there for the tournaments and all that, and I think a lot of that is due to Steve's leadership. General obligation bonds were obtained and millages were passed for the purposes of purchasing, acquiring, constructing, maintaining, operating, and improving parks, playgrounds, rec centers, and other recreation facilities. Coquille Parks and Recreation has developed to a full-service park which now includes 4 gymnasiums, 5 athletic fields, 5 baseball fields, 3 softball fields, playground area, splash pad, and trails, and they just hired, and I'm very happy to say, their first executive director. They did a nationwide search. It's a fantastic, the way that they went about it, everything. I believe Michael is from Philadelphia. So they went a little bit north and to the right. A little further north than Folsom. So I'll hush, and then what I'll do is I'd like to read this certificate. Whereas the parish government creates boards and commissions which act as political subdivisions in providing services for the citizens of this parish, and whereas these boards and commissions are composed of residents appointed by the governing authority who are concerned citizens interested in contributing to effective government and preserving the integrity of St. Tammany Parish. And whereas this governing body desires to recognize those dedicated individuals who serve as members and contributed to the effective operation of parish boards and commission, and whereas one such individual is Stephen L. Dwyer, who has served on the St. Tammany Parish Rec District 14 Board of Commissioners for 16 years, serving as chairman from 2000 to 2015. And whereas Stephen L. Dwyer established himself as a significant member of this board, was instrumental in decision-making, and earned the respect of fellow board members for his commitment and dedication. Now therefore be it remembered that the St. Tammany Parish Council hereby recognizes and expresses sincere appreciation to Stephen L. Dwyer for his dedicated service to the citizens of this parish during his tenure as a member of the St. Tammany Parish Rec District 14 Board of Commissioners. And I think it's a testament to his leadership and his ability to connect with people, but he's got a good bit of his board members behind him and his executive director. So I'll turn it over to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. I would like to say, though, that being able to serve on that board, and particularly being chairman for the last 15 or so years, truly has been a singular honor in my life. We've worked hard, but it has not been work, it's been a labor of love. We came together 16 years ago, hardly knowing each other, many of us not knowing each other. We had no money, we had no land, we had a dream. And working together, we've been able to realize that dream, and if whoever's been out there has been able to see what we've done, it's a fantastic facility. We've been able to develop not just recreational ball fields, but also a whole concept of a park, and that park is continuing to unveil and show itself, and it will continue into the future. But speaking to a political body, I would like to say one thing before I leave, and that is one of my proudest accomplishments, and I guess one of the proudest accomplishments of our whole board, is that during our term in office, going back 16 years since we were formed, we have never had a vote on our board that was less than unanimous. Never. That's not to say I sometimes didn't allow a vote to come up, but they were all unanimous votes. You've got an unbelievable board and group of citizens out there doing the kinds of good deeds and achieving the kinds of accomplishments that you would hope for when you appoint a board like this. So I thank you for your wisdom, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve this community. Thank you very much.
Leave it just in time because Red is on. All right. You leave it just in time because he's. No,
Mr. Dwyer, I'd like to say that I've been here 4 months, and I've had a lot of votes that have not been unanimous. So I need to talk to you after. This time we'll go into the consent calendar. I have ordinances to pull as number 1 and number 22, and resolutions number 1 and number 14. I said resolution. Ordinance 21 also, I'm sorry. Mr. Dean, do you have any additional? Mr. Sharp? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Falconer? Mr. Gould? Mr. Groby? Mr. Belisario?
Item number 12, Resolution C-4338.
Resolution number 12. Anything else, Gene? What? Mr. Fonzie? Mr. Bender? No, sir. Mr. Ortiz? Mr. Smith? Ordinance number 1, 5365, and ordinance 22, 5392, and ordinance number 21. Does the administration have anything they need to pull? We will pull those, and those we'll discuss. The rest of them, I'll take a motion to adopt the consent calendar. Motion made by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk, that we approve the consent calendar. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Okay, we will start with ordinance number 1, which is 5365, an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, Parish Code, to prohibit the possession and use and/or discharge of weapons and/or firearms on parish-owned property. Mr.
We're still working on this ordinance, and it needs some revision, so we would ask that it be postponed until next month.
Do you have a
Move to
motion
postpone.
Mr. Stefanczyk, Mr. Ortiz, any discussion? Ready to vote?
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Ordinance number 21. Which is ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.32 acres from A4 to A4 and a mobile home overlay. Wow. Dennis, you want to pull that? Do what? Oh, okay. It needs to be introduced and referred to the planning commission. Zoning commission. Motion made and seconded that we introduce and refer to the zoning commission. Vote. All right, ordinance number 22, ordinance to amend the 215 operating budget. Pull, Mr. Bender.
You're going to refer that to the zoning commission. There needs to be a motion to refer it, a vote taken.
I asked that and he said no, but okay. We had a motion to refer. Shall we vote? Ready to vote?
You just have to introduce.
Somebody didn't vote. Mr. Bender? Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay. Ordinance calendar 5392, number 22. I have Mr. Bender wanted to pull. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment number 4 will,
4?
well, excuse me,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, it is.
to the
amendment number
operating
4.
budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is to allow the coroner, number 1, would like to make a donation from his funds for the Behavioral Mental Health Task Force, the continuation of it with Ms. Jan Roberts. They've been relying on grant money in the past. The parish will be contributing $12,000 to keep it going forward. We need an additional $60,000. And in speaking with Dr. Preston, Dr. Preston is fully behind and was very, very willing to move that money from his account into the purpose of the behavioral mental health. If you look at this more closely, there was also an issue last year when the coroner's office came before the finance committee through no fault of anyone, okay? They were suggested to split up in 2014 and in 2015 some car purchases, a new DNA analyzer, and some software that they needed for 2015. Somewhere between the hearing of their budget and getting through the system to finance, don't know where, doesn't matter, it did not get placed in the final budget. So this was approved by the Finance Committee. I've talked to Ms. Pat and Ms. Leslie. We're all in agreement that these funds were intended to be budgeted this year. It was just a mistake. And so therefore, this amendment includes that as well. The cars are on order. The DNA analyzer is on order. We just need to allow them to move the money from their own savings account into purchasing these items. And I'll make the motion that we introduce.
Mr. Turner, I'll second the motion. I just want to make one comment. He had
No, it's
used
an
the word, I think in error, as a donation. It has to be a transfer.
Yeah, it's part of the cooperative endeavor
Yeah,
agreement.
right.
Yeah.
So that'd be a transfer.
Yeah, transfer.
We don't need to vote on that, we just need to introduce, right? All right,
Yes.
motion been made and seconded, we introduce to the next meeting. Okay, is any other thing that we need to pull off the consent calendar and discuss?
You got resolutions.
All right, resolution number 1. Let me get to it. Resolution approving the issuance of not exceeding $700,000 of limited tax certificates in St. Tammany Parish Recreation District 4, State of Louisiana. Steve?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've been working with, I've had some homeowners from Briar Lake contact me, and I've been working with them. Going to have a meeting with them later on this month on the possibility of changing the boundaries of Recreation District 4. the boundaries of Recreation District 4 run along the 9th Ward, between the 7th and 9th Ward, which is an old invisible line, doesn't follow any of the precinct lines. Half of Briar Lake is in this district and half is not. And we're looking to see which way we're going to go with that. Need a couple of months to get that done, and so I'm going to move to postpone this until the July meeting.
Motion made and seconded to postpone to the July meeting. Please vote.
Mr. Smith, motion is unanimous, one absent.
Next is resolution number 14, resolution council series number 4340, a resolution to concur or not concur with the Mandeville annexation and rezoning of .70 acres from Parish NC5 to Mandeville B2, Ward 4, District 10. Ms. O'Brien.
Move to concur.
Second.
Any discussion? Motion's made to concur. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Item 12. Item 12.
Item 12.
Resolution 12, to acknowledge receipt and review of the 2014 Municipal Water Pollution Prevention Environmental Audit Report for Crossgate Sewage Treatment Facility, Ward 8, District 9.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have Director of Environmental Service Greg Gordon to speak about this briefly. I've had some people questioning the report. What it comes down to is an education process and how the report is put together and how some of the calculations. On Monday, with part of my district community, Ms. Pat Brister, the president's going to be there, myself, and President of Crossgates to talk about issues in that particular area. Mr. Gordon?
Oh, yeah. Good evening. The information that's derived in this audit report comes from two main sources. First of all, in all of the influent, effluent data that is in that comes from discharge monitoring reports that are issued, that are taken from grab samples of the treatment plant. They are signed by me and provided to DEQ on a monthly basis. So all the numbers that are in those reports are loaded into this report to show what's going on with the influent and the effluent of the plant. Thankfully, the plant did not have any exceedances on influent and or effluent. The other portion of this report deals with the collection system and repairs done to the collection system. Oftentimes that's somewhat subjective because we have to self-report overflows of the system. 2014, we had a lot of inflow problems into the plants and into the two lift stations in a specific area, the St. Luke's and the Phase 5 lift station. This year, we made some repairs to that. That had unintended consequence of an overflow in the last rain, which will be denoted in next year's report. But for that year, 2014, which is covered in that report, we had water coming into the system, which we treated, and we did not have any effluent overflows from the plant. The one thing that usually is a good thing to denote is Part 9, subjective evaluation, is where we go into what happened and what we had to do to the collection system to make certain improvements. We notice what we'd say in there is that we did general maintenance. We replaced pumps as needed, and where lift stations needed to be renovated, we planned to renovate those. That was when we did the report from last year. We started those renovations late last year, and we finished them this year. So that will be denoted on next year's audit.
Other discussion? Mr. Bender?
Yes, Greg, I just have a question, okay? Because it just so happens that I happen to know a lot of people that live in a section of this, okay? I receive phone calls about the question of the less than 1% of repairs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, okay, that's a,
in the whole year of 2014, you're saying that that system required less than 1% repairs?
well, they're talking about sewer lines. So we did not do, in terms of sewer lines, there's about 126,000 linear feet of sewer lines in the Crossgate system. For this year, we know that we're going to repair one section of a 900-foot section on Crossgates Boulevard. So next year, that will be denoted in the report. But for example, 900 feet is probably 0.008 or 7% of the total linear feet of the system. So that'd be far below 1%. The year that's covered by this report, we did not do any major repairs over a couple of thousand feet to denote that any of those things would be over 1%.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Stefanczyk, you have it light on? You have a resolution to adopt this, a motion to adopt? Moved by Mr. Belsario, seconded by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Administration, audience, please vote.
Mr. Ortiz? Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
All right, is there anything else that needs to be addressed from the consent calendar? Hearing none, we will go to appeals, which is number 1 is Danny Delat appealing zoning commission approval on March the 3rd, 2015 to rezone .35 acres located south of Highway 22, west of Timberwood Court, east of Indian Trace Boulevard, being 1859 Highway 22 West, Madisonville, from A2 Suburban District to NC4 Neighborhood Commercial District, Ward 1, District 4. Applicant Rose Vaughn, postponed from 4/2/15.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good evening. Tom Snyder. I'm counsel for Mr. Delat. I'll try to be brief and succinct. I was taught that brevity is a virtue, and I find that to be true. As you just recited, this is an appeal from a zoning hearing that took place on March 3rd. The property was rezoned from residential A2 to neighborhood commercial NC4. And what we're talking about is a .35 acre piece of property on Highway 22 going out past Madisonville, heading west. And if any of you were to view the video transcript of the zoning hearing, I think there are a couple of things that stand out, and there's one thing I think that's important that's noticeably absent. First, the staff recommendation was that the application be denied. Typical considerations regarding health, safety, public welfare, those things being considered, the recommendation was that there was no compelling reason for approval. Right below that, the staff recommendation actually said that it be designated for approval, so there was some confusion about what the recommendation actually was, but it was clarified by the staff at the zoning commission hearing in March that the recommendation was to deny the application, seeing no compelling reason. What was advanced as the reason for the change was Ms. Vaughn's stated desire to be able to pass on her business. She was operating an insurance business on the property to her son without any problems in the future when that happened. Now, she has a non-conforming use, which of course is transferable when the property would be sold to her son. And there was some back and forth at the zoning hearing about why this was even necessary in light of the non-conforming use. In any event, what appeared to be an attempt to appease or allay that concern going forward, Ms. Vaughn agreed to accept an NC4 zoning change, but what the commission was not told was that she had already sold the property to Mr. Tim Militello, who's here tonight. So the multiple representations to the zoning commission that she didn't want to see any problem when she went to sell the business and the property to her son was never going to happen. It had already been sold. So that calls into question, I think, whether the decision-making process of the zoning commission was affected. Again, she stood before the commission and repeatedly made representations that she still owned the business, that she intended to continue to operate the business, and I would like to know what the zoning commission's opinion would be if they had known that the business had already been, or that the property had already been sold. I would just suggest that everybody take a look at the video and judge for yourself. What was not discussed, and this is the third issue that I think is important, is that, and I want to make sure I get this right, the NC4 zoning change, NC4 requirements say that no new lot can be created unless a minimum size lot of 20,000 square feet. If you do the math on 0.35 acres, it's 15,000 square feet. So this zoning change results in a piece of property that doesn't even fit within the NC4 guidelines, okay? There's a structure on it approximately 12,000 square feet, which fits barely under the maximum of 12,500. There was some concern stated at the zoning commission hearing with the nonconforming use that if the property were to burn down or if the building were to burn down, she would be unable to build the same structure and replace it with what existed. Well, with the setbacks that are in place now, she wouldn't be able to do that anyway. I mean, we're talking about a difference of about 500 square feet that she's left to play with it there. So, you know, on these bases alone, coupled with the original recommendation that there wasn't any, I suppose, benefit to the public and safety considerations, which is another one. This property sits on Highway 22. It's a very small piece of property. Everything that sits on it practically takes up all of the area. And if this was going to be operated as a business, there's no place to park. And in fact, at the time of the zoning commission hearing, Mr. Militello, who owns BJ's Warehouse, had already moved in appliances, storage, some heavier equipment, trucks, things of that nature. So, you know, it's already started. You know, given the zoning staff recommendation for non-approval, the fact that I don't think the zoning commission had all the facts necessary to make this decision, I think and we respectfully request that the parish council reverse the zoning commission's rezoning from NC4 and return it to A2. If there are any questions, and Mr. Delat is here, he'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have. Otherwise, thank you.
Tom, thank you. Do you have any time left?
3 seconds.
No, none. All right, at this time, is Ms. Vaughn here?
Yes. I take extreme offense to Mr. Delat's attorney. I take offense because if they would have done their homework, yes, I did say I wanted to preserve that to possibly sell to my son. Then this wonderful couple came to me and said, Ms. Vaughn, we would like to buy your property. So I said yes. If the attorney would have further checked, we tried for active sale at the very end of February, and the company which passed title, or was going to pass title on my property, their check bounced, which null and voided all sale of the property. At this time, I was in Boston taking care of a very ill sister. So what I did was, as soon as I came back, I contacted the title company. We redid some paperwork. They transferred funds into my checking account, my corporate checking account, which was well into the first week of March. So that was after I came to that council meeting. So I find very much offense to that. The reason was I knew I was going to sell that property. That is why I wanted it zoned the way it did. On the original application, the zoning board said, please apply for an HC1. And I said, I don't think that property needs that. 8 years prior to me being aware that there was a zoning change, I was rural, like commercial. Never been a problem. I've been operating a business there since 1988. Prior to me, there's been businesses there since 1966. So when the zoning change came and they made it all residential, that put my business out of being in compliance with zoning. That is another reason why I wanted that done. So I knew I was going to sell the property, either to my son or to somebody else, and I wanted to make sure there was going to be no problems down the road, because that's the kind of woman that I am. Now, one of the things that I asked the zoning board at the time, I said, just give me what you think is appropriate. And that was conversations that I had in the zoning offices. So when it came across the zoning board, they looked back to see, yes, my company had had an occupational license for all those years, had been paying corporate taxes, had been paying property taxes on corporate buildings. It wasn't just an office there, I had a warehouse. I investigate for commercial use of air conditioners and equipment for big insurance companies. That's what was in that warehouse. It wasn't just an office. So the new owners are doing the same thing. They're going to have an office there, and they're going to store equipment, refrigerators, washers, and dryers till they go to salvage in that warehouse. So that is what really has transpired here. So as a council, I ask for you to please do what you think is right for the new owners. There was no effort on my part that I was planning on defrauding the zoning board or you as a council, because I hold you in high regime of doing what you do, and you do an excellent job at it. So at this time, I'd like to turn the time over to the new owners of the property. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any time left?
He has a minute and 43 seconds left on the 5 minutes.
Thank you for your time. I just wanted to say that that building, that small piece of property, is more than adequate for what I do there. I'm a little small wholesale business. I have no retail. There's not going to be any traffic coming in and out for parking. I don't need parking. I bring in maybe 30 appliances a week. I refurbish them, I clean them, I move them out. That's all I do there. And I'm not causing any commotion. When I first bought the property, went to Mr. DeLatte, told him I'm going to be a great neighbor, not going to cause any commotion. And here I am before you today. So I'm just going to leave it in your hands. If you want to approve the zoning change, that's fine with me. If you don't, then I'll just move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir. Will you give me your name and
Timothy Militello,
from?
Madisonville. I live at 335 Sandy Brook Circle.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the other side have some referral time?
They both have rebuttal.
You got rebuttal? So you want to come up? 2 minutes.
Okay, thank y'all for hearing me, and I guess the reason I retained, counsel, because I didn't feel like I was heard at the original zoning thing. But first off, I guess I should say this is a copy of the sale of the property, and it's prior to the meeting. So whatever offense is going on that Rose has, the offense is watching her up here continue doing what she's doing. Because I spoke with Tim Miletto, the new owner. He came over, introduced himself. I said I didn't have a problem with what he wants to do there. I didn't want to see a sign up on Highway 22. I know that he doesn't have enough room to do a retail business, and that's what my concern was. He assured me that he's not going to do any of those things. And I said, okay, great, well then you don't need a zone change, because what if you get in an accident and you pass away, and now the zone's been changed and the new owner wants to put up a sign. And, I just thought, and even after the last, when it was postponed, I talked to him outside, and he seemed agreeable to leave it at A2. I told him I would sign papers with planning and zoning so he could operate his business. There's no need for him to move on, like he just said. I'm not opposed to what he's saying he's going to do on the property. I'm opposed to having a sign. That little piece of property was at one time part of the property that I purchased. I own 2.67 acres. It was a 3-acre lot. That was a wood shop or something that the house burned down, and that was the shop that the guy did his woodworking in and stuff like that. So I think there's a, agreeable way to do this. I'd like to see it left at A2. That's what it was intended to do. I spoke with Mr. Dave Manella after the meeting, the zoning meeting, and he told me about the long-range plan for what they wanted for the parish, and that eventually there's going to be, the last piece of residential property on 190, he was telling me, and then it's not going to be no more residential there. And I don't see why you would just take this, it's been moved to A2. It was A2 when I purchased the property. The neighbor next to it's opposed to it being zone changed, and, move it to NC4. It's still, the property's not going to be conforming, from what I understand. It doesn't have enough
Your time is up.
square footage. Okay, well, thank y'all, and I would just ask you to deny that, and whatever the planning and zoning had recommended. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Vaughn, you have any rebuttal?
Mr. Delotte conveniently forgets to tell the council that he's only owned that property for about 4 years. He does not live at that property. It's a shell of a home. There is nothing finished in their home. There is no flooring, I don't believe. I've never seen appliances ever come in since I've been there. Nobody lives in that home. He has a residence someplace else that he maintains. He bought that property 4 years ago. He knew I was there. He knew what we did. He knew that there was going to be somewhere down the line that I was going to sell that property. There has never been a problem. The only problem with the neighbor on the other side, he didn't like the idea that during the peak part of the summer season, I might have 300 air conditioners out there that I'm investigating. He complained. In less than 2 weeks, I cleaned it up. That was 11 years ago without a complaint from any neighbor at all. So that's all I have to say to the council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Falk.
Terry, you and I have talked about this issue with the ownership. Would you explain to my colleagues the basis of the conversation that we had?
I've been provided a copy of a cash deed, that the cash deed was recorded at the courthouse on the 24th of February. The zoning hearing was on March the 3rd. At the beginning of the meeting, the chairman of the zoning commission asked for the owner to come forward, and Mrs. Vaughn stepped up with, I believe, someone that was later identified as a real estate agent. During the course of the meeting, and I hear what she's saying today, that there's been a voiding of this transaction. I did not find anything where this was nullified in the court records. During the course of the meeting, it was stated that she wanted the son will be buying the property from me. And she kept saying, grant me some zoning. So there are issues regarding what was presented at the zoning commission that I think that you need to take into consideration regarding what further action is needed on this matter.
Sydney, can you confirm for us that the issue, the square footage in NC4 would be inadequate to meet the minimum lot standards under?
Well, actually, the standards say that no new lots would be created. The fact that it is already substandard is not an issue. If it was a, say, 30,000 square foot lot, we could not create 2 lots out of it. So if the actual specific language is, and I'll quote it, no new lot shall be created that is less than 20,000 square feet. This is an existing lot. This would not be a new lot. This is just a rezoning of an existing lot.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hand, one final question legally. If this were to remain A2 in its present zoning, Mr. Militello has purchased this property. Can he continue to operate in that non-conforming status if it remains A2?
That is correct. So long as he's continuing the same type of businesses at that location, he has a legally non-conforming use and will be permitted to continue.
Yeah. All right, well, I mean, with that in hand, I mean, I think it's clear that at the time, it's clear to me certainly that at the time of the hearing, there was misrepresentations as to the ownership of the property. And so I'm going to make a motion to override the zoning approval and deny this change.
Motion made and seconded to override the zoning approval. Any discussion by the council? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Want to introduce a resolution?
Move to introduce.
Second. Who won?
Move to adopt a
It's
resolution.
a resolution that we need to adopt.
So moved.
Discussion on the resolution. Please vote.
Mr. Faulkner? Mr. Artigue? Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to, y'all understand what happened? Yes, okay. Number 2 is, hearing is Carlo Hernandez appealing zone commission approval on April 7th to rezone 11.68 acres located east of Highway 59, north of Grande Mason Boulevard, west of Fontainebleau School, from NC4 Neighborhood Industrial District to PF1 Public Facilities District, HC1 Highway Commercial District, and HC2 Highway Commercial District. Ward 4, District 5, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Carlo Hernandez, 2818 Mesa Court, Mandeville, unincorporated Mandeville. This property is the property immediately in front of Fontainebleau High School, Fontainebleau Junior High School, between the school and Highway 59. Now, a lot has been made apparently about what transpired at the rezoning, comprehensive rezoning. I was present at all of the comprehensive rezoning hearings dealing with this property. And certainly the zoning commission at the time recommended that it be neighborhood commercial 4 because of the activities that they wanted to see taking place right in front of the high school and the junior high school. The zoning commission recommended that. The parish council also agreed with that recommendation after public hearings and also approved the NC4 designation. Now, for those of you, I think NC4, we're talking about, just in the previous appeal, 12,500 square feet maximum within a 20,000 square foot parcel. Now, the highway commercial 2 designation, which is the majority of the area. We're talking of the 11, slightly over 11 acres. We're talking 8.2 acres of HC2, a little over 1 acre of HC1, and PF1 of 2 acres. Now, I'll leave the PF1 alone because that is in fact a downzoning from the existing neighborhood commercial 4, although churches are allowed in the neighborhood commercial 4, but, so I'll leave that one alone. We're dealing with the HC2 primarily and the HC1. Now, what are the existing uses that are there? All of the existing uses that I looked at and were all permitted uses within the NC4, with the exception of the bank. The bank sits on a piece of property that obviously requires it to be designated something other than NC4. But of course, with the grandfathering in of that took place, it is an existing non-conforming use. Now, the zoning that's proposed for that allows for banks and financial institutions greater than 3,000 square feet. Now, this particular bank has far less than 3,000 square feet in there. Now, there is no, and I think that's one of the things hopefully that this council will take care of, there is no banks in financial institution of 3,000 square feet or less. There's no such thing. One would think that it should be in HC1 or possibly NC4, NC5, something other than HC2. Obviously, there's a 3,000 square foot greater than, but nothing less than. I think that's an error. For a long time, the facility, the Highway 59 facility, is one lane in each direction. There's one turning lane also. That's been in place for a number of years. For a long time, there was a moratorium in place that included this area against any new construction within 200 feet of the right-of-way. Now, there were a couple exceptions to that within the, and I don't want to tell you how long, but it was a long time that this was in place. And the reason was because of the traffic that's on there. The traffic that's on there now is the same traffic that's going to be on there apparently for the near future. Except that now, if you go along with this recommendation, you're going to increase it from 12,500 max to 40,000 square feet in the HC2 and 20,000 for the 1 acre that's in HC1. So what do you think? Do you think that wasn't a consideration when the Parish Council was looking at what should be in front of this? Now, most of the things were existing. We have professional offices, doctors, we have real estate agents, we have builders that are located there. We also have the bank. We also have a veterinary clinic that's there, all approved, and with the exception of the bank, are all permitted uses on the thing. There's also the church property, which again is permitted under the NC4 designation. There are a couple of other uses too that are on there, but I don't want to go through all of them. The one thing that's interesting though, if you compare with what we're probably going to do here, and let's say what's in Mandeville, city of Mandeville. Mandeville Junior High School is surrounded by what? Residences. All around residences. Mandeville Junior High School. Mandeville High School is what? Lots of residences on there, and there's on one side, after the side street, there is some commercial that's associated with that. So I'm hoping that you will consider approving only the PF1 and leaving the rest as NC4. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who is the appellant? I guess you missed, who represents the people that own this property? I'm sorry. Mr. Devine, David Devine.
David Devine, 340 Maple Ridge Drive, Mandeville, Louisiana, 70471. We're just asking for the zoning that we, as part of my property, I'm not representing all of the landowners, but we have the property, one of the properties in front of the school there, and we had this property rezoned back in 1999 after we bought it in 1997. We went through 2 years of legal issues getting it done. I have paperwork here representing about $85,000 worth of legal and engineering fees that were approved by the parish and the Corps of Engineers. We have fire marshal approved drawings. We have zoning drawings. We have the DEQ approval. We have Department of Public Works approval. We have traffic approval. We have engineering approval, water approval. So we'd just like to have our zoning back that we had it changed to about 15 years ago. Thank you.
Carl, you have any rebuttal?
Well, hopefully you all know that what took place back when he just described it was then superseded by the comprehensive rezoning. So that took precedent over whatever zoning was then in place at the time. It's interesting, and I didn't hear him say that, maybe it's one of the vacant lots. There are a couple of vacant lots, undeveloped lots that sit there right now. So going from NC4, 12,500 square foot, to 40,000 square foot for HC2, is a dramatic increase in the uses that we have potentially there. You know, some of them, and of course some of them can't take place, and that is dealing with alcohol. Restaurants with alcohol, lounges, those things cannot take place there because it's right next to the school. So those are out. There are a number of other things, though, that could take place there, and one would wonder about whether, department stores, one of the things that could take place there. Okay, drugstores, well, I guess drugstores, food stores, restaurants without lounges. just an example of some of the things that could take place there. And I'm wondering, why in the world would you want to have, a dramatic increase in that when, oh, by the way, drugstores are permitted in NC4. Of course, its square footage is much less, so unless they're building a giant drugstore, then it wouldn't be permitted. But something 12,500 square feet or less would be permitted. So I'm asking and requesting that you keep the zoning at NC4. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Devon.
HC2, less than 27 feet across the street. The approved set of drawings are 9,000 square foot buildings, not 12,000 square foot. We're not going to increase the size of the building. I'm not going to go through that expense again. We have no intention of putting drugstores in. We did extensive surveys in Duval Estates neighborhoods, Heritage Heights neighborhoods, Grand Maison neighborhoods. We asked the people what they wanted. They wanted stuff like bakery shops and donut shops. I don't want any drugstores. I don't want any strip joints. I don't want a bar.
Mr. Goode?
Floor is closed. Floor is closed.
Yes.
Okay. Sydney, technical question. Bank with the drive-through, zoned NC4, is that non-conforming use?
Be non-conforming.
Okay. The church, two very large buildings under NC4, they're non-conforming use?
It would be close, but I think that the size of those churches would be very, very close.
Very
If
close.
not- if
Okay.
not-
Can it be more appropriate to make that
we
what
made
you
the
have
recommendation,
recommended?
yes.
Can you give me the reasons for the recommendations?
We looked at what was existing there, the volume of traffic, which is, the real problems, I think, with Highway 59 is the school volume of traffic.
Mhm.
That's when you have jams on Highway 59, is after school, and then in the evenings. We looked at both sides of the road. If you remember, initially, it was looking at a much larger area, and we indicated that there were some areas that should not be changed. But because of the types of uses along this area, the vacant properties, the church, the banks, those types of things, we decided to allow a transition from the interstate end of the property in front of the school down towards the church, which is the last piece of property before you hit the first residential.
Right, we
piece
pretty
of
much
property.
did the same thing on the western side of 59.
Yeah.
Where there's a very large amount of
There's a large
HC2.
amount of HC2 because the residential was further down the.
Okay, so it was
occupied
more,
residential.
it was also,
And you have, again, a church terminating that commercial side.
correct, so it kind of makes a good buffer when it breaks
Correct.
off. Thank you, I appreciate that. Mr. Devon came to me about a year and a half ago and said he lost a couple of sales on the property because of it having been down zone. I said, and I asked him, what are you talking about? And then he explained to me that he was HC2 before, or it was a C2 at that time, I believe. And during a comprehensive rezone, apparently we downzoned him. Now, I don't recall having a discussion about the eastern side. I do recall having a discussion and actually made motions to change some of the zoning on the western side. And those changes were made to reflect what we projected as highway commercial property. I certainly would not have created non-conforming uses. That's why I asked the staff, let's look at the whole thing and make sure we got it right. And they looked at the whole area and they presented me with their recommendations. My motion is to concur with the recommendation to rezone.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Seconded by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Motion to introduce.
Motion to introduce an ordinance. Second. Second by Mr. Thompson. Thanks. Number 3, James Moran, appealing zoning commission denial of April 7th to rezone 21.22 acres located south of Brewster Road, east of River Chase Drive, south of Interstate 12, from A4 single-family residential to A6 multifamily residential to A7 multifamily residential, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Moran.
Mr. Underhill is here representing Mr. Moran. He's to my left. Before, I guess if you would indulge me for a second, we put a document package together, and basically we, as I represent River Club Development, an adjacent property owner to the proposed zoning change, we were in opposition at the zoning commission level, and we put together a proposal to the council to move forward and allow that would be designed to allow y'all to vote in favor of providing a zoning change to the A7 that was denied at the zoning commission level. So if you would, if I could present that first, and then maybe there would be some questions following. But at the proposal from the Maumont Group, represented by Mr. Moran and Mr. Underhill, was to provide an A7 zoning change on a parcel of property that's approximately 22 acres for an apartment development that would be to the north of currently River Club development off of Brewster Road East Extension. And at the zoning commission level, that request for a change of zoning was denied. Thus, the appeal came forward from Mr. Moran, represented here by Mr. Underhill. Following that zoning hearing, we have gotten together, and as of today, we have submitted Mr. Maumont Properties through Mr. Moran has submitted a request for a modification of his original zoning request to withdraw approximately 5 acres of their zoning request that was denied at the zoning commission level. So as we come before you tonight, the zoning application has now been amended as a result of that letter that we had sent to Mr. Hand and also the clerk of the council, and I have copies tonight, in order to modify that zoning request to delete the parcel of property that is set forth in that written request for the amendment to the original zoning application. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background, and at the zoning commission level, the main opposition involved an objection to the nearness of the A7 to what is basically an A2 use, which being the River Club development. And we've addressed that, which I'll discuss in a minute. Also, the A7 provides for a height of approximately 68 feet. We've, in a restrictive covenant that I'll discuss in a second, we've limited that to 38 feet. And also the density was excessive in the A7. And in the restrictive covenant, we've now limited that to something that, rather than being 20 units an acre, had lowered it to approximately 13 units an acre, but it's pegged in the restrictive covenant that we've agreed to at 299 units. As we have gotten together to try to address the issues that would make the apartment and the configuration that he's proposing palatable to the River Club group, in addition to the density issues, we've also agreed that this multifamily project would be the only one that would be on this River Club Drive coming into the River Club development. So there would be a further restriction that would prohibit additional multifamily within a corridor along the River Club Drive. And they have also agreed to establish a fund for additional landscaping in certain areas according to a landscape plan. So based on the removal of the parcel of property that was immediately adjacent to the residential, so in other words, we created a buffer, and based on the restrictions, an additional item of restriction that are included in that restrictive covenant document was that the 5-acre parcel that will remain zoned A4 would have no construction within that parcel. That's approximately 5 acres. And basically with those agreements that we have mutually worked out, we would respectfully withdraw our opposition to the zoning of the A7 as now modified. The descriptions of the parcel that would remain A4 is in the letter that I presented to the council, which is approximately 250 feet off of the north boundary of the River Club property. And we've also provided a legal description for the portion of the original A7 zoning request that would remain before you tonight. So from a procedural standpoint, in my view, what you have is you do have a recommendation of denial coming from the zoning commission, but we've now modified the request in order to delete the lower or the southernmost 250 feet of that zoning request from the requested zoning change. And again, we've provided legal descriptions of both of those pieces, the removed part as well as the portion that would still be before you for a vote. I would also point out that from the Beaumont side, as they started trying to configure their project within the remaining portion, which the site obviously went from let's say a 21-acre site, we removing 5 acres, so they left with 16. They will subsequent, if the A7 is approved tonight, the remainder of this case that is before you, if it is approved tonight, they will then file a request, another application for zoning change for an additional parcel of property that will be to the west of this remainder portion of the 16 in order to be able to fit their project on the property. Now, that will be that'll be a subsequent zoning case. It'll wind its way through the process with the zoning commission, and with us no longer, with the adjacent property owner no longer in question, that matter may not get to you, but I wanted to point that out to you, that there would be an additional filing by Mr. Underhill representing the Beaumont Group, and that would conclude the matter. So what you have left is the A7 as it relates to the 16-acre parcel north of the piece that had been withdrawn. Is that?
Yeah, no, the only clarifications that I would add to.
I think you've used your time already.
Okay.
Both
Sorry.
you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not sure,
I am the other side, so we kind of convoluted this issue.
So combine it.
The only clarifications that I would add are two things. Number one, we agreed that we won't construct any buildings in that buffer area. There will be some site work construction. And then further, we would be left with, in this restricted no multifamily area that we've agreed to, some additional A6 zoning, which we will also pursue a zoning modification for as well, concurrently with the additional A7 to move to an NC zoning, an NC5 zoning. So that would be subsequent to this. So,
as I view it, all that being said, the only thing I guess you really have before you from a pure zoning standpoint is whether or not you'd be willing to override the zoning commission denial of the A7 zoning in light of the amendment and modification of the presentation.
Mr. Jerry?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question for my clarification. Mr. Burris, you're referring to this Exhibit C. I see on here it's going to be 15.612 acres, and I see the 250 feet. I just want to make sure this is what you were referring to.
That's correct. The 250 feet is the portion that is being removed from the zoning request. So it, in fact, is zoned A4 right now. It will remain A4.
Right.
It's being withdrawn.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Anybody else? Mr. Dean?
Okay, before I make a motion, just simply put, it's going up about 250 feet and is going to be going out at the next, he's going to be asking to kind of bump it out, those are my words, I guess a couple acres, to the west. So it's coming north off that property line 250 feet. And then in order to continue with their project, then you'll see it again in a zoning commission meeting to rezone that extra acreage to the west. And then in addition to that, and I think everybody's happy with this, where it was A6, or where it currently is A6 right now, they're going to be asking to downzone that to NC, a neighbor, NC5. Okay, all right. So with that said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion to override the denial of the zoning commission for the top portion minus the bottom 5 acres, 250 feet. Is that clear?
No, I've got another question. But, I just wanted to get a motion on the floor before we started talking about it. Yeah.
Mr. Fountain.
Mr. Burris, I've got a plat, Exhibit B. I'm not real proficient at on the fly trying to catch up with a pro se verbal. Could you just explain this Exhibit B? It's got 4 parcels identified, and it seems like it could be really simply just put if you can just tell which parcel's which.
Okay, on the Exhibit B, the parcel 1, which would be on the eastern side, the top parcel, that is the parcel that you will be voting on tonight as A7. That's what's left in the case. The parcel 2 is the portion that we have removed. That's what we're talking about, the 250-foot buffer. That would be, as Townsend pointed out, that would be a restriction for no building on parcel 2. The reason that you see parcel 3 and parcel 4, that has more to do when they put the exhibit together. That has to do with some prohibition against multifamily that we're going to be dealing with on the restrictive covenant. But again, from a pure zoning case, the only thing you have left before you is parcel 1.
Great. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Great. I didn't realize that everyone had a copy of that plan. That would have made it clearer.
Does the council understand what the motion is? Yes. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you.
Get a motion. I need to introduce an ordinance. Mr. Dean. Mr. Thompson. Okay, number 4. Mr. Brian Travier appealing the zoning commission denial on April the 7th to rezone 71 acres located south of 22 west of Trepanier Road, east of Heller Drive to PUD Plan Unit Development, Ward 1, District 4. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Paul Marone on behalf of Mr. Entravia and Yannon LLC, which is the proposed developer of this tract of land. Appeal number 4 and number 5 are related cases. One is the underlying zoning, one is the proposed PUD overlay. At this point, we would ask that both matters be tabled. We're still in the process of working on our plan in an effort to address some of the concerns that staff raised and that the zoning commission raised. So we would ask that the matter be tabled until your meeting in June, when we hope to be back before you with a modified plan that addresses some of those concerns.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we postpone item number 4 until the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Motion made and seconded that we postpone to the next council meeting. In discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
I also move, Mr. Chairman, that we postpone item number 5 until the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Motion made by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Thompson, that we postpone item number 5 to the next council meeting. Is there any discussion? Ready to vote?
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Moving right along. Number 6, did we have some things that were some speakers? There was one on appeal number 4, but since we postponed it, I'm not going to introduce, it's a lady who wants me to read a statement, but I'll pass this on.
I spoke with the constituent this afternoon, Mr. Tanner, and she's aware that we are postponing tonight, and so we don't need to read her statement. It's fine.
Thank you. Number 6 is is it Courier? Career. Hano residents, Hano Road residents, Debbie Forrest, Janelle Parker, Sherry. Ooh, y'all eating me up with these things. Huh? At all. Appealing the zoning commission approval. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. State your name and address for us, please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kay Career. My address is 128 Hano Road in Madisonville. And I am here for the Hano group, of which we have several of the other appellants who we will split our time and just allow them to share their concerns and their feelings. We came together because we're concerned about the growth on Bootlegger Road, the lack of infrastructure, the traffic, and the drainage. We were able, with the guidance of Mr. Dean, to work with Paul Marone, representing Mr. Intravia, for the A5 development. We've come to understand that it is a downzoning into residential, and we were able to work with them to get some concessions. We, of course, would have preferred having a few more. And we look forward to working with them in the future, and as a group, even though some people might have felt differently, as an individual, as a group, we did withdraw. Okay? Mr. Marone?
Are you changing sides now, or what? I need to know which way to run the clock.
Do you want to go ahead and have
Yeah,
everybody
I think
go?
maybe everybody should
Okay.
speak, and then I'll
That's
finish.
fine. I wasn't sure about the protocol. Sorry, sir.
But there was a motion to withdraw, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay, hi, my name is Sheree Graham, and I live at 377 Highway 1085, which is just a small quarter of a mile just down from the proposed land. I realize that our motion we've all agreed to withdraw, but I felt it was my place to be able to have a few moments to be able to speak how I feel on this situation. I want to start out by saying that I am a resident of Madisonville, and I am not opposed to the growth in the area. I'm not opposed to all growth, as some people have claimed that maybe I am. I do know that there is growth needing to be. But I am a concerned resident about how the growth that is opposed. I am a concerned resident that is opposed to the rezoning of the property that is not conclusive in our area. I feel that the tract of land mentioned is currently zoned HC1, A2, and is now up for rezoning for A5. And I do not feel like this is anywhere close to being inconclusive with this area. I feel that at a meeting that we had had earlier in the week to try to work out the differences with our councilman, Mr. Marty Dean, and the other participants of this, it became very clear to me that Mr. Dean was very much in favor of this and honoring Mr. Intravia with the zoning change, of his feelings that he would be an asset to the area. As I do agree that the rezoning from commercial to residential is a great idea, I do feel that the A5, we had major concerns of the schools, the flooding, and the traffic in the area. And when I explained those concerns to Mr. Dean, he had explained to us that those problems were out of his control. This is where I feel like that I differ from Mr. Dean, and to think that the appointed officials, yourselves, y'all have this opportunity to be able to hear, review, and decide if the changes in this area are in the best interest of the community, and not only in the financial gain of the developers. With this being said, I then realized that Mr. Dean does not seem to totally have the residents in our area in his heart, concerns at his heart. After much deliberation, with my own personal feelings, and with high recommendations, I was convinced to drop the appeal. So in conclusion, I just want to thank y'all for giving me the time to be able to speak my feelings from the heart about the area here in Madisonville. It just saddens me to think that just a few of us people cannot speak loudly enough to get across the point about the massive growth in our area and how we feel that we need our council members to try to help keep that in control. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Debbie Flores at 150 Hano Road. I can't really think of anything else as to what Ms. Kay and Cherie said, but actually it's the growth. I don't mind growth either, but it's the schools, it's the traffic, I'm concerned about the drainage, but overall, just the property next to that property, you got another 40-something acres, and then once this starts getting done, maybe this another 40 acres going to do the same thing, and then Madisonville Elementary is that it seems, Lancaster is that it seems. Where are we going to put these kids? How are we going to drive on the highways without bumping into one another? There's no in and outs of Madisonville. You got 1085 and you got Highway 22. So my concern is the traffic. My concern was the drainage, and just later on in building with these I want to say it's 40-something acres. There's two other people that own property right behind this property. What's it going to be like? I mean, is it going to be another A5? Is it going to be like A2s? I mean, where are we going to put the people? I mean, 1 acre lots are great, but anyway, my concerns was the same as Ms. Kay and Cherie, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
As you can see, we are a group of individuals. We're a group of different homeowners. We're not an HOA with one voice speaking for us. I will say that Councilman Dean, okay, as well as the zoning department people that I met with, assured me that the council, the zoning department, and others do not take highly to people within an A2 future land use area and having an A2 designation wanting to upzone. And we're hoping that you will stand by that as this area of West St. Tammany becomes a hot development area, because we do have A2 in many of the areas going down Bootlegger Road, and we would like to keep that within all reason from being upzoned to a higher designation. At this point, Mr. Marone.
Thank you. Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner. Although the appeals were withdrawn, it has really morphed into an appeal hearing. So I do feel compelled to at least address some of the issues that came up. And I think the most important issue to remind the council of is that this is a downzone request. We are not asking to take 23 acres of A2 and go to A5. We have about 14 to 15 acres of HC1 that is bordered by the interstate and Highway 1085. I think a fair layout of that track, you could have arguably 400,000 square feet of commercial. It is not my client's desire to develop it as HC1, which led to the request to the down zone. And I believe that it was the down zone that was compelling to your staff when they recommended approval, and compelling to the Zoning Commission when they almost unanimously recommended approval of our request to you. With regards to some of the issues that were raised regarding flooding, traffic, and drainage, I respect those concerns. As I told Kay when we met with her and with Ms. Hebert, we understand and respect those concerns, but as you know, those are not issues that we deal with at the zoning stage. They are issues that we deal with at the planning stage, and we will deal with them at the planning stage. But as I pointed out to them, and I believe that I'm right, your regulations with regards to residential development, with regards to the traffic impact analysis, your impact fees, with regards to drainage and the requirement that we reduce runoff by 25% in the 100-year storm event are some of the most stringent in the state. And I believe that this development, developed as the A5, will have much less impact on all of the surrounding areas than we would have if it came in under HC1. So again, I think the down zone is important. We did reach a compromise, which led to the withdrawal of the appeal. I've given Ms. Carrera a letter which identifies those items, and I'd like to just very briefly put those on the record this evening. One, the staff had recommended or suggested that we consider coming back with a PUD. We have agreed to do that. We are going to be preparing and filing a PUD plan to do a PUD overlay of the A5 zoning. In addition to doing that, well, as part of that PUD, we also agreed to include several components. One, of course, is mandated, which is the 25% green space, but also to limit the curb cuts on the highway to 1, and also to establish a 50-foot no-cut buffer along Highway 1085. So those will be incorporated within the PUD plan that we'll be submitting. In addition, once that PUD plan, if that PUD plan is approved and finalized to the point that we have a work order and we're able to move forward with the infrastructure and the development, we've agreed to a deed restriction so that there will be only single-family residential units on the site. The A5 allows duplexes. We've agreed not to construct duplexes, but to have single-family residences, which was a significant item of compromise on my client's part. So all of those items will be incorporated in the PUD plan that will be submitted to your staff and will be before your zoning commission. They are in the letter that I've given to Ms. Carrera, which identifies what we are agreeing to do this evening. So with that said, we would respectfully request your approval, although perhaps procedurally with the appeals withdrawn, there may not need to be a motion to concur. But in the event that your legal counsel says there is, we hope you would do that and move forward with the introduction of the ordinance to A5.
Who's this, Marty?
No, it's his, but I have a question for Mr.
All right,
Marone.
go ahead.
Mr. Marone, you said the reason you're asking for A5 is you need a higher density. Is that correct?
That's correct. Going from the HC1, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And that's driven by economics. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
The cost of this property, it's HC1, is considerable.
That is correct. It would not make any sense to take it out of HC1 without the A5.
Yeah,
it would be better just left in its current zone and developed accordingly.
And you said this property could conceivably have 400,000 square feet of commercial?
That's correct. If you look at the 14 to 15 acres of HC1 and take out the infrastructure needs, you would have multiple parcels which would allow potentially that type of overall square footage.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, before I make a motion, I want to just say, one of the things that the zoning commission and the staff suggested approval for this project, and probably, I saw it on TV, but I wasn't here, probably for the same reasons that I did, plus some. It is a down zone, as you said, that there could be a few 100,000 square feet worth of commercial there. I do take all of that into consideration anytime that I meet with folks about any kind of development, whether it be residential, commercial, or what are big shopping centers or small developments like this. This is right up next to the interstate. Another reason why I am believing that I'm taking care of the residents in District 1, particularly that area, are the many concessions that Mr. Marone and Mr. Intravia gave, such as a PUD. Now, we all know that when you do a PUD, you got to immediately 25% of it is green space. So you just lost 25% of that. They also, and then you have to do things like recreation areas. You have to do many other things that you wouldn't ordinarily. If he wanted to, he could just strip the whole place out and put a whole bunch of houses. He changed from duplex to single family. He agreed to a 50-foot buffer all the way around. So there are many reasons why, and this is why I believe that the best thing to do to take care of the District 1 people, which I have attempted to do for the last 12 years, this is the reason why I believe that we need to allow this to develop. So having said that, I think that's all I have to say. Having said that, I would like to move to concur with the Zoning Commission's approval. I'd like to make a motion to concur with the zoning approval.
Motion made and second. They can concur with the zoning approval. Anybody else? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Nation mode. Motion made second to introduce the ordinance. Number 7, Chuck Hickman appealing zoning commission denial on April 7th to rezone 1.327 acres located south of Gladys Road, west of C.S. Owens Road from A2 Suburban to CB Community-Based Facilities District in Rural Overlay, Ward 1, District 1. Ms. Hickman, is it?
Yes, sir. I'm Candace Hickman, 653 Timberwood Loop in Madisonville. We're here to ask the council to review the request for rezoning of our 1.3 acres of our property on Gladys Road from its current zoning A2 to CB1 with an RO. The purpose of a community-based facility district, or CB1 zoning, specifically reads, the purpose of this district is to provide for the location of public or quasi-public uses that are appropriate within close proximity of residential districts. Within those permitted uses is our intended purpose of creating a recreational facility owned by a public or private entity. There are several locations with a CB1 zoning within our area in which we're located. One located within 3.3 miles, a CB1 that shares a boundary with an A3 area within close proximity to another A2 area. Another located within 2.3 miles on Brewster is adjacent to an A2 and an A4 zoning within a highly residential area. In addition to those, there's another that's located within 2.1 miles, bordered by A1 and A2 zonings. In addition to those, there are 2 more intent zonings within a half a mile of our location, which one is a school, ED1, and an NC6. The one that's zoned as an NC6, that again is located within a half a mile of our location, had comments from the staff at the time of rezoning, considering that CB1 should be considered as a more appropriate zoning for that area instead of the NC6. And I'd like to explain what we'd like to do with that CB1 zoning. We currently own a baseball facility, Mayhem Baseball Club. My husband owns and operates a facility by himself. We don't have any employees, and we're not a large organization. He instructs individuals and small groups of children in strength and baseball skills. We own 10 acres on Gladys, and it's our hope to live and work on that same property. We're asking to rezone only the 1.3 acres of that property because that's the exact amount of space that we need to fit our intended purpose. We intend to build an attractive building that is approximately 100 by 60 feet, that would be around 22 feet tall. That's exactly the amount of space that we need for the baseball cages inside. Our primary clientele range in age from 8 years old to 18 years old. And our primary hours of operation are after school until around 8 o'clock, as our clients are school-aged children. We bought this property with hopes to live and work within the area, to devote our time and efforts to contribute to the area. I'm the assistant principal at Madisonville Elementary, which you probably know is right in front of the property, and very vested in this specific area of the community. We currently live in Madisonville with our 3 young sons and are active in the community and developing the local youth. This would be an attractive addition to the area. Last, we would be willing to agree to a deed restriction that would restrict the undesirable uses of that CB1 zoning, yet still allow for our intended usage.
State your name, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Thad Bayham. I live in 59101 Pine Bay Lane in Lacombe, Louisiana. And I'm representing the Bayham family who owns some property in that area. have owned property for many, many, many years. And I would like to comment just on this whole CB1 thing. And it's being portrayed as a quasi-public facility. And in fact, this is 100% commercial for-profit business. Now, they claim that it's going to be a small operation, but that's not what their website indicate. They've had almost 500 hits on their website. And they are advertising statewide. And not only that, they're advertising for rental of that building to baseball teams. That's not a small operation. Now, it's clear what's going on here. This is for profit. This is return on investment. They're moving their facility from Mandeville, and you know the rent in Mandeville. And they're going to get some cheap land and get a tremendous return on investment and walk away with a Winfield profit. You know, the website, it convinced me of their intentions. And you know, they're business people. You're not going to pay for a 6,000 square foot building with the amount of business that they're claiming that they're going to get. The community just don't buy that. Now, the CB1 says that it can be located in close or in proximity of a residential district. This is being located in the middle of a residential district. In fact, if you go westward from that location on Gladys Road, there's 5 houses less than 500 feet from this facility. If you go east, there's about 10 houses and less than 1,000 feet from this facility. Now, we understand business and understand it might help the community and everything. But where it became personal for that community, who is already living in a state of hopelessness because of what the parish has done relative to the school district, creating a very unsafe condition and a very poor quality of life. This is going to add to the situation. And they don't have any recourse because they don't have 10 acres to hide from this facility. What made it personal is where they're locating it. They're located in an area where they can run from it, they can hide from it, where everybody else living real next to it, across the street from it, will have to endure what they're not willing to endure. This is what the community believe. The hopelessness in the community is compounded by the fact that you can't even get out of your driveway early in the morning and late in the evening because of the people taking advantage of people in that community. They block the driveways. They don't pay attention to the stop signs. And you know, the hopelessness is compounded by the fact that the parish has covered up a 800-foot ditch, which is going to cause problems in the future in that area. They don't have any recourse. They can't escape. They need your help in this area. And I'm not going to buy the fact that somebody is going to operate a business at a loss or operate a business at a small profit. That's not good business sense. I respect this gentleman. This man is a professional baseball player, was drafted by the Cubs. He's got good sense. This man, I would send my kid there. He's going to draw some people. It's impossible for him not to draw people. So we know you got the power. We know you can make the decisions to do what you need to do. But consider that neighborhood. They don't have any defense. They don't have great organizations like the other organizations. They don't have lawyers. They're poor. They don't have options. And this will decrease the quality of life that has already been decreased for people in that community. sorry.
5 minutes is up.
Time's up. Do we have a rebuttal from the other side? We'll get to you right after this.
In regard to a few things that he said, yes, we do have a website, and it inherently is a website, so it's an international thing that you can get to. We are a local entity, though, so although anybody around the world can see that on the website, they don't live here in this area. With regards to advertising to baseball teams, a team still only consists of 10 to 12 players, and that is a small group of children. Again, it's an after-school activity. I'm, as much as the residents in that area, understand the traffic that the school brings, but this is not competing at the same time as that school traffic. I know they're talking about the property value and what that will do, but we intend on living on this property. So we will be residents of the area just as they are, and intend on building an attractive place that would maintain, if not increase, the property values around it. And again, Chuck can only teach a certain amount of kids at once. So we do have a limited amount of availability of kids that can come in at one time, because they're not coming for the facility, they're coming for the instruction of my husband. So he can only instruct a certain amount of children at one time.
Okay. Your name, please.
My name is Earl Crandall. I live at 208 CS Owens Road in Massillville, Louisiana. I've been there 45 years, you know, and I'm against this project because it is a residential district. We already got enough problems, enough issues there with that school. You know, if we really had an emergency in that area from 8 to 4:30, we'd be in trouble, because I'd go to work at 7:45 and I could hardly get out my driveway to go down a one-way street because the school's there. The school been there. I understand that. My kids went to school there, you know. Gladys Road have issues. So we finna put a facility there at nighttime now. We got enough problems in the daytime. So why should we do this at nighttime? I've been there 45 years. This been a nice, peaceful, quiet neighborhood. Sure, I like expansion like everybody else. Massillville is busting at the seams because everybody done allowed it. This, you know, we know growth is good, but we got enough problems in the daytime. So now we're gonna get a facility that it's short. She said 8 o'clock. Then it'll be 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, lights. I be right there looking at lights. Can't go to sleep. Enough noise over there with kids. Come on now. Enough is enough. Thank you.
All the time. Steve?
They got 40 seconds left.
Yes, I would make this one comment. If this is the situation, then I challenge these people to locate this building the furthest point from all 4 boundaries on this 10 acres, if they're really concerned about the community and they want to do some good there.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Whose district? Mr. Dean?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, could I speak directly to Ms. Hickman? Candace? Just to ask a couple of questions. Mr. Bayham was suggesting that you said on your website or somewhere that you all were going to advertising for rental of the building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that, can you talk to that?
What we currently do is, if a team would like to come in and use the space, that one team can come in and use the space. But again, a team consists of 10 to 12 kids, so it's still a small group of kids at once.
And would that be in addition to the kids that you all would have? In other
Well,
words?
they would be taking up the facility, so those could not happen at the same time.
Okay. Hang on 2 seconds. I'd like to address Mr. Fontenot. Hang on, Candace, I might got some more questions.
Okay.
Sydney, how many, in a 6,000 square foot building, how many parking places would that have to have?
I would have to look at the ordinance and see on the recreation
You don't have that just like
facility.
on the top of your head?
I don't have everything. I have 4 different codes in this head. And I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So,
You can't ballpark?
I mean, because it's a gymnasium, there's a different scale than a normal retail, which would be 300 square feet. So it'd be, retail would be much easier for me to calculate.
Right, okay.
But we don't do a whole lot of gyms where we have to keep that on the top of our head.
All right. Okay. And Candace, how tall is the building going to be?
We were looking about 22 feet. That would give us the adequate space to put a cage in, and the lighting that would be needed.
Okay. All right, so
That would be the maximum.
y'all
yeah.
have 10 acres. You want to rezone 1.3 of them.
Yes, sir.
The rest of it's going to remain residential.
Residential, yes.
Right? It's a 100 by 60-foot building. We were talking earlier when we all met, we were talking about just the other allowable uses in CB1.
Mm-hmm.
That I believe that you all were going to do a deed restriction
Yes,
to
we'd
cut
be happy
those
to
out.
deed restrict any of the undesirable out of that.
Okay. Any of the undesirable uses that we talked
Yes,
about?
we are looking for the ability to do the recreational facility as a backyard kind of business.
Okay. All right.
But this is the only zoning that kind of fits.
So you were saying there was a precedent already set where there's CB1 next to A3 and then CB1 next to A2 and A4?
Yes.
Okay, where was that, you said?
There's one off of Highway 1085 that is located, the properties match up to an A3 PUD. One that is near Chifuncta Country Club, and the other that is on Brewster Road. And the the NC6 that was actually recommended by the staff to be a CB1 less than a half a mile from our facility.
Okay. All right. Sidney, did you have something?
Yeah, just because it was addressed as a recommendation of the staff, there's a significant difference between changing from an A district to a CB1 and an NC6 to a CB1.
Well, it was originally a residential, that they were looking for an NC6, and the recommendation by the staff was to go down to a CB1 since they were coming from from residential.
Residential, okay. All right. Just to address the other side, one of the things that has to happen is that if this is passed, it gets laid over for 30 days. During those 30 days, I'll work with the Hickmans. If anyone else wants to sit down with us and talk about the deed restrictions or the restrictions that they would like to place in it, including the placement of the building. I'm not guaranteeing anything that they would move it or whatever, but including the placement of the building, but certainly the things that you take out of CB1. So, Candace, you all would be agreeable to sit down and talk about that? So we have 30 days from, I guess, between now and the June meeting before we actually vote on the project, on the ordinance. Okay, with that being said, I'd like to,
28 days.
I'm sorry.
If you're ready to make a motion, I wanted to interject something and ask Sydney on this, because I know that this was a strong denial of a 10-to-1 vote. But when they brought up rentals, are rentals allowed within a CB1 for a building that's supposed to be recreational?
Well, if you look at the CB1 classification, it talks about public and quasi-public uses and the types of uses listed there. The purpose of the CB1, and these uses are allowed to be rented, is the church in Cross Gates, where it is actually in the community. A golf course in either one of the country clubs or in Beauchene, any type of facility like that where it is appropriate to be within that residential district. The idea being that the other alternative is to make those properties commercial to allow those uses. And so we created the community-based facilities to allow those uses to be integrated in community when deemed appropriate by the parish council through the rezoning. And so that was the reason for the CB1. So yeah, they would be able, golf courses, tennis courses, they sometimes they're public, sometimes they're private for profit. And it allows both those uses. They would be able to to rent it as long as it is part of a recreational training type activity
Okay.
in this case.
Mr. Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sidney, I'm just trying to straighten out a couple of issues as I'm listening to this and then reading the documentation, okay? I keep hearing 10 acres, but I see 6 acres. And I just did the calculation on the measurements, at least what's in our packet, and it is 6 acres. The other question I have is, just for informational purposes, is it's saying here that it's 1.327 acres. And I'm assuming if you look at the last page, that this is 1.327 acres within the 6 acres, not 10 acres.
It is 1.32 acres within a 6-acre parcel, which is a plat that you see in your packet.
Right, but so.
They may own other property, I'm
Yes.
not sure. They may own another
It's like
parcel.
an L, it's a 6-acre piece, and when we turned it in, they said we didn't need to provide the 4-acre piece that's attached to it. When we purchased it as a 10-acre piece, a 6-acre parcel, and a 4-acre parcel.
Okay, thank you, I understand that, thank you very much. But Sidney, here's my question. How do I want to get this in my head. The 1.327 acres, the request is to divide it into 2 different zonings. The request is to divide it into partially CB1 and partially rural overlay, correct?
No, the underlying zoning district would be CB1. There's a rural overlay. It goes on top of the underlying zoning district. Just as a mobile home overlay would, just as a PUD would. You have your base zoning, and then we have an overlay that in this case, in the case of rural, allows additional uses in addition to the normal underlying zoning uses.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, Mr. Dean, I'd like to just ask one more question to educate myself, okay? We're still talking about 1.327 acres, right?
Yes, sir.
But we don't see where at on the 6-acre map the 1.327 acres is located.
If you look, there should be an aerial in your packet with a dashed line where it is actually fronting on Gladys Road.
Now, I've got a box on Gladys Road, I don't have an aerial.
Well, that's 1.327 acres.
Oh, that's 1.327 acres.
So it'd be the front 1.3 of the 6-acre parcel.
Okay, thank you. So let me just ask you this. Without the CB1, which you all were recommending against, can there still be a rural overlay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Smith?
if I may, the last question that Mr. Bender referred to is where I'm having some difficulty also understanding, and I see the staff comments right near the last part of that paragraph where it says, staff has no objection to the request for a rural overlay, considering that the area is rural in nature and developed with a mixed and undeveloped land and single-family residence. So am I to understand that to mean that if this request were just for a rural overlay, which we don't have, I don't believe, as a zoning classification, then staff would have no problem with it. But how do I?
The zoning designation would remain the A district. So it'd be single-family. What the rural overlay did was allow, when deemed appropriate by the council, and primarily for those areas, primarily north of 36, we have quite a few in Mr. Groby's district where you have the rural lifestyle that moves down essentially 434 into the Lacombe area. It specifically allows farming, agricultural, commercial and industrial uses limited in size that support agricultural uses. You know, you have people who do welding on tractors and farm implements, roadside farm stands, those types of things. That would be, so you can do a single-family residence and then have this type of use also allowed, which is not normally allowed in a single-family residence, residential area. In order to do the facility that they're discussing with the baseball facility, they would need the CB1.
Thank you. And so, in conclusion, you're stating that for A2, which it currently is now, the rural overlay would be more conducive and in line with rural overlay.
Well, if they would like to have one of these uses, we have no objection to the rural overlay uses being added to their A2. It is you know, that part of Madisonville, of Ward 1 is growing rapidly. It has been for the last 10 years, with the exception of the 2008 downturn. Mr. Dean can tell you it's probably one of the fastest growing parts of the parish, if not the fastest. But it is still largely rural in nature, and we would have no objection to those rural type uses being allowed there. We have concerns because the specific location of this CB1 on this road with the surrounding, you know, the specific place this one's located of the location of it, the CB1 here.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that as it relates to what I'm looking at when the assessment describes the surrounding uses. And so on all four corners, there is A2 zoning primarily and exclusively, really. And so as I reflect back on the last case we just looked at, and I don't want to bring that back up again, but we had an unusual situation where the zoning commission and we as well frowned favorably on down zoning, and I put a flag there because that's an unusual situation that we see, and this kind of flies in the face of what we normally see when we have development wanting to go one way, and here we have development wanting to go another way. And so in this particular case, though, we have an opposite situation that's occurring here, where we want development to go one way when the norm is for it to remain another way. But I thought that was significant to point out, though, that we need to remember that as we move down the road, as we consider these types of cases. I appreciate that explanation, Sidney.
Dean?
I think I've discussed it enough. I'd like to make a motion. I didn't know how to make a motion? All right. Must have been dreaming. All right. I'd like to make a motion to override the zoning denial.
Motion made second to override the zoning denial. Ready to vote? Please vote.
Motion passes with 10 yeas, 2 nays, and 1 abstention. Yes, 2 nays. It's you and 1 other.
Groby abstained.
Groby abstained. Mr.
Yeah. She's the only one who abstained. Belisario and Smith voted no.
Nay. Yeah, that's what I said.
You want to introduce an ordinance? Mr. Dean, Mr. Thompson, introduce an ordinance. Okay, ordinances for adoption. Thompson. Ordinance calendar number 517288, ordinance to amend and reenact Section 3, 164, location restriction of alcohol beverage regulation. Mr. Goo. Is ready?
Yes.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Anybody in the audience? Staff? Please vote.
Mr. Bender, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, it's not registering. Yes. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance number 2, calendar number 5322, ordinance to amend the St. Tammany Parish Uniform Development Code by creating section 609, entertainment overlay.
Mr. Chairman, this came back with a unanimous vote, but they had some amendments. So what we're going to have to do is amend it and then reintroduce it. So my motion is to, number 1, amend.
You know what the amendment is?
It's right here. You should have a copy of it.
That's fine. So I have a motion to amend, and have a second? Second. Motion made and seconded that we amend. Any discussion on the amendment? You ready to vote?
Mr. Belisario. Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
We need the ordinance to reintroduce.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to reintroduce. Ordinance calendar number 5364 AA, ordinance to amend section 1805104 of the Code of Ordinances relative to the powers and duties of the zoning commission. Amended and introduced.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Staff? Public? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Ordinance calendar 5366, an ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 35,800 square feet from NC4 to A5, Ward 3, District 2. Motion made and seconded for approval. Any discussion? Staff? Audience? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5367, ordinance to amend 2015 operating budget, amendment number 3.
So moved.
Mr. Belisario, Mr. Steve, was it? Richie. Any discussion? Staff? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5368, ordinance establishing the placement of an all-way stop signs at the intersection of Ranch Road and Taylor Road, Ward 8, District 13.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Ordinance calendar 5370, ordinance to impose a 6-month moratorium within the unincorporated St. Tammany Parish on either side of 1088 from Soul Street to Hickory Street, Ward 4, Districts 5 and 7.
So moved.
I'll second that. I have a motion
made
to
and
amend.
seconded.
I have a motion to amend.
Okay.
I'm going to remove the property north of 1088 from the moratorium. It's been 3 years. The problems that we're dealing with out there, primarily people trying to get out of their subdivisions. In conjunction with that, I'm going to ask that the staff give us a full report on where we are with the state, and at that time, I may consider putting the district back in. But quite frankly, based on last stuff I've heard, this is going nowhere, and it's accomplishing nothing. So that's my motion to amend, is to remove the district from the moratorium.
To remove the moratorium?
No, my district. It's
Remove
property on
your
the north
district
side.
from the moratorium. Have an amendment, have a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
Call for the vote.
Any discussion? Mr.
Mr. Chairman, this has to be reintroduced. That's a major change to the ordinance.
Okay, I agree.
However, it is less restrictive. It's less restrictive.
Yeah, I think we can suspend the rules and adopt as amended.
Okay.
Let's vote on the amendment first, huh?
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
All right, do I hear a motion to suspend the rules to adopt the ordinance as amended? Mr. Goo, Mr. Thompson, discussion? I guess we're going to suspend the rules first, and then we'll move to adopt. 2/3 vote required to suspend the rules. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Your motion to adopt the ordinance as amended.
No, we have that. He started with that.
You can't start with amendment after you amended it. You got to go back and do the ordinance as amended. Amend. Yeah, can I say them? Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Ordinance number 5371, ordinance amending the official zoning map to reclassify 1.2 acres from A2 to HC1, Ward 7, District 7.
So moved.
Mr. Grovey? Second. Mr. Goo? Discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Appointments. Resolution to appoint one member to replace Pablo Melendez as the Hotel Motel Campground Association member with recommended, the Hotel Motel Association recommended Valerie Waltz.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Fosdick to appoint. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
All right, the next item has been removed from the agenda. We go to items off of the floor. Number 1 is a motion to refer to zoning commission for recommendation to propose rezoning of land from A2 in rural overlay to HC2 in rural overlay, Ward 3, District 2. So move, Mr. Goo. Mr. Sharp seconds it. I have some people that have requested time. Do I?
Did we open the floor?
Oh, I'm sorry. We never did open the floor.
Okay.
I'm ready to go, boys. I need a motion to open the floor. Second. Mr. Belsario, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
All right, floor is open. Motion 1, to refer to zoning commission for recommendation to propose rezoning of land from A2 and rural overlay to HC2 and rural overlay. Mr. Shaw. Motion made and seconded. We have people who have requested time. Mr. Hernandez.
Carlo Hernandez. You know, I just want to point out to the council that what you're about to do, there are two parcels here, apparently. 5.229 acres, 1.67 acres. I haven't had time, because there's an exception in there too, and I didn't have time to calculate everything, but I calculated the 5.229 acres, which I think is at least a minimum. So looking at that, you're about to waive $847.90. So just keep that in mind, that you're about to waive that fee, which I believe could be used for other purposes, including defending the fracking suit. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Number 2, motion to refer to zoning commission for recommendation to propose rezoning of 1.97 acres from NC4 to HC2, Ward 9, District 11, Mr. Stefanczyk.
So moved.
Any discussion?
I didn't calculate the cost, but they've already paid it twice to get this thing changed, so I don't think that they should have to pay a third time to get it back to where they want it.
All right, we
And
have
where it should
a
have been
card from
prior to
Mr.
comprehensive-
Hernandez, and we'll recognize him.
You know, it's interesting that you're saying they've already paid twice for the thing. Obviously, they didn't get the results, apparently, that they
No,
wanted.
they did.
Oh, they did?
comprehensive
We're not gonna go back and
rezoning
forth
redid it.
another. We're not going back and forth.
Okay,
Make
well-
your statements and don't be asking questions.
Thank you. 1.97 acres equates to $522 is what you're about to waive in fees, which again could be used for the fracking litigation. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 3, a resolution to appoint Mimi Goodyear Dossett to replace Bessie J. Richardson, term expired, to Hospital Service District Number 1. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Dean, any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Number 4, resolution to adopt changes to the St. Tammany Parish National Hazards Mitigation Plan originally passed in 2004 and changes adopted in 2010.
So moved.
Motion, who was the move? Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Any discussion? Does anybody from the staff, y'all need to say? No discussion, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you very much.